Unfortunately for you.
What the hell is that?
You know what it is, bitch.
Look at that enlarged head. Who wears that?
Alright, let's get to the chase. The bro. Compared to other games in the Souls series, Bloodborne takes much longer to finish a build proper. That includes 120 meta builds and everything in between. Bloodborne requires you to do 4 things before your build is complete. 1, play through the game, either to get weapons, armor, or hunter tools that your build requires, or to open up more areas for online activity. 2, spend potentially hundreds of thousands, if not millions of blood echoes in order to level your build to the desired blood level of choice. 3, upgrade your weapon all along the way, though the upgrade materials gradually become more difficult to farm, especially the bloodstone chunks and blood rocks. And finally, 4, pray to RNGeezus and hope you get better blood gems. And that 4th requirement is usually the biggest slog out of all of them, and it's a feature that's unique to Bloodborne. Even the fastest routes demanded that you go through about 8 or 9 chalices before you can begin to farm those top tier gems. Not to mention the fact that dungeons added anywhere above 20 extra bosses for you to comb through, and you needed to farm chalice materials from those same chalices in order to unlock the FRCs. That stands for the Fettid, Rotted, Cursed Chalices. These are the chalices with the best gems in the game. So with all of this busy work in mind, it is completely understandable why many might have stayed away from making full-fledged characters in Bloodborne. Every other game on the market has RNG these days. Destiny, Monster Hunter World, Overwatch. But Bloodborne had this extra filler before RNG ever even came into the equation. This made the whole experience a bit much, for lack of a better word. That is, until now. As I've stated before, in order to reach and farm the top tier blood gems in the FRC chalices, you needed all the chalices that preceded in order to enter. But starting now, you can cut down the amount of chalices you need and the bosses you have to kill by more than half, thanks to what's known as False Depth Story Chalices. Now, for the vast majority of you, False Depth Chalices is a totally alien term. I'll keep it simple. These False Depth Story Chalices were concocted by the user known as Trin. Players like Trin, Zullie the Witch, and a few others have found a way to go into the code of Bloodborne and edit the code of the Chalice dungeons. They've replaced the insides of what would normally be Depth 1 chalices with Depth 5 chalices. This means, quite literally, that you are able to go from the first Thumaru chalice to chalices like the Thumaru Ihyll, the Isz, and the lower Loran, just like that. You no longer need to go through the Central Chalice, or the lower, or even the Defiled Chalice. You don't have to fight the Defiled Watchdog or Defiled Amygdala ever again. These bosses are now optional. So unless you're into S&M, in which case, I don't judge, I am too, the route to the FRC chalices have been immensely shortened. Remember, the goal here is to open the FRC chalices so you can pop open one of those spreadsheets online that have all the glyphs to get your desired blood gem of choice. While the RNG of getting those gems is another issue entirely, the filler that Bloodborne had before has pretty much been cut out. Here, let me show you. The chalice path is now as follows. Start a new game. Kill Gascoigne. Kill the blood-starved beast and get the Thumaru chalice. At this point, you can begin dungeon diving. However, big warning here. If you're relatively new to the chalice dungeons and don't know what's in store for you, it is, of my personal opinion, that you ought to continue playing through the base game as normal and prepare yourself and your build for those deeper dungeons. Return once you leveled up to BL 70 at least, that's my recommendation. Once you have stronger blood gems, either from the Winter Lanterns of Murgos or from the Winter Lanterns of the Fishing Hamlet, which is in the Old Hunters DLC, and have at least 18% gems in all 3 of your weapons gem slots, then you'll be able to comfortably take on the deeper depths of the dungeons with more than decent damage. But again, going through the main game is entirely optional. You can just waltz into the dungeons as soon as you have access to them. Just don't expect it to be easy. Unless you're some kind of PvE god, or you summon overleveled friends. The next step, obtain the Thumaru Root Chalice. You can get this by beating the Watchers on the second layer of the Thumaru Chalice. Once you get this root, you can immediately jump to the Lower Loran, or the Isz, or even the Ihyll, thanks to the FD Story Chalices. For those daredevils who didn't already get the blood gems from the main game, you can stock up on blood gems now from other False Depth Chalices. The Glyph XC284UGX is where you can begin farming for 21% physical attack up radials, which will definitely help your AR. There are 2 flaming sword dudes in the beginning of this chalice that drop them. With these gems, you can theoretically go toe-to-toe with the droplets you could get from the Old Hunters DLC. However you prepare, the next step is getting the Isz Root Chalice. Use the glyph ZWMN9YZN to unlock your way into the False Depth Isz. The goal here is to create an FRC Isz Chalice. The biggest reason why we're creating the FRC is because its requirements are the least demanding out of all the FRCs. There are less materials needed than the Ihyll and the Lower Loran. As you're dungeon diving, do keep in mind you're fighting at depth 5 enemies and bosses now. Expect a moderate to strong amount of resistance and maybe quite a few deaths along the way. And don't forget about the bosses that are tough, regardless of your level. There's Eberitas in the Isz, there's the Descendant and the Bloodletting Beast in the Ihyll, and then there's the Loran Yeah, let's just not talk about him. Persevere long enough, and once you beat Eberitas in the 3rd layer of the FD Isz, you'll get the Root Chalice. Note, don't get rid of that FD Isz you just went through, because now you need materials to make the FRC Isz, which that previous chalice can provide. Getting these FRC materials proves to be relatively straightforward. You can either collect them from the main game, if you chose that method, or from looting other chalices themselves, if you're in a hurry. First, there are 10 Ritual Blood 5s in the FD Isz you just went through. There are 3 in the side area before you reach the Layer 1 boss door. There are 6 in the Layer 2 area, then 1 in the pre-boss area. At this point, you'll have 10. In theory, in order to get the final 3 Ritual Blood 5s, you can remake the FD Isz and get your final 3 that way, or you can also acquire them organically from layers 1 and 2 of the FD Ihyll glyph. You can take care of 2 birds with 1 stone, seeing how every build needs radials, and you get radials from gem farms from the Isz Root Chalice. If you're going through the main game, there are also 3 of those Ritual Bloods located in the Upper Cathdral Ward, in the main room of the orphanage, after you kill the werewolves. But lastly, you can get the Ritual Blood by farming the Ailing Loran glyph, C76P8SBE. In the main room, behind a ladder, lies a hallway that leads into a side room where there's a chest that drops you 2 Ritual Blood 5s. Simply get them from the chest, delete the chalice, re-input the glyph, and repeat. But you can also get 4 Pearl Slugs from the second layer of the FD Isz Chalice that you started with. There are 2 in a large staircase room on the upper floors of the second layer, in the pre-boss side area. Wow, that's a mouthful. The other 2 are next to a large circular room on the mid floors of that same layer. Then there's a room in the 3rd layer of the FD Ihyll Chalice that has one lone brain sucker and several chests strewn about that room. You'll find enough red jelly, Tomb Mold 5, and Sage's Hair for the FRC requirements. Red jelly can also be obtained from the main game as well. There are 2 specifically in one of the corner rooms of the lecture building 1F. Likewise, all 3 pearl slugs are in the main game too. There's 1 in the chest at Bergenworth, and there's 2 in a hallway patrolled by a brain sucker in the upper cathedral ward. For the yellow backbone, there are 3 in a locked off room in the upper floors of layer 3 of the FD Ihyll Chalice. Then you have the option of either remaking the same FD Ihyll glyph in another open chalice slot that you have and getting the 3 yellow backbone located in the 3rd layer again, or you can farm the rest of the yellow backbone from one of Zullie's FD chalices, specifically the glyph I mentioned earlier with those 2 flaming sword dudes. They can not only drop physical gems, but yellow backbone as well. Conversely, if you're going through the main game, the one Reborn drops 3 yellow backbone, and you can find 2 of them in a chest in the Nightmare of Mensis after you encounter the NPC known as Edgar, the scholar-looking dude with the Ludwig's Holy Blade and Rosmarinus. Finally, there are 2 Bastards of Loran in the 2nd layer of the FD Lower Loran Chalice. That's ZQXWJ9G4. Across a bridge in a side room filled with beasts, there's a chest holding them in the center of the room. Once you get those, you can delete the chalice and remake it in order to get 2 more. If you're already in New Game Plus though, you can buy Bastards with Insight from the Bath Messengers closest to the workshop doors and the Hunter's Dream. You can also get Yellow Backbone from NG Plus Messengers as well, by the way. However you get those materials, and I no doubt that you have the Blood Echoes required as well at this point,
that's pretty good.
Bing bang boom, you have yourself your very own FRC Chalice. Now, you only need to make 1 FRC Chalice in order to have access to other FRC glyphs, but there's one caveat. You need the root chalice of said glyphs too. Let me explain. If you made an FRC Isz, you don't need to make an FRC Ihyll or an FRC Lower Loran in order to use glyphs from those chalices. You do, however, need the Ihyll root chalice and the Lower Loran root chalice first. You can get the Ihyll root chalice from the Bloodletting Beast in the 2nd layer of the FD Ihyll glyph. Likewise with the Lower Loran, either beat the Lower Loran Dark Beast in the 3rd layer to get the Lower Loran root, or buy the Sinister Lower Loran root in the 2nd layer via the Bath Messengers that you can find there.
Because the Lower Loran Dark Beast.
Don't worry about having to memorize all this. I'll have 2 links in the description to help y'all along. There'll be a link to a Google Doc detailing the same route I just talked about, and a link to the False Depth Glyph chart. Use them at your own discretion. And there you have it. Open up as many FRC glyphs to your heart's content and begin farming right away. Like I said before, you don't need to do the Central Chalice or the Lower or even the Defiled Chalice anymore. Technically, Platinum Trophy hunters do need to go into the Ailing Loran in order to grab the Beast Claws, which there is a glyph for that, by the way. But for the vast majority of you, you don't necessarily need to beat a single boss in that chalice anymore. The chalice grind of Bloodborne has been nerfed. For the most part, anyway. Even one of the tougher builds to get up and running, arcane builds, no longer have to take 30 to 40 hours of setup time to get right. For example, I streamed Bloodborne for 2 nights, took my time, leisurely went through the main game as well, and it took me 9 hours to get to the point where I could use a +10 Lost Ludwig's Holy Blade and have 3 gems outfitted with FRC gems. All on an arcane build. Not to mention that physical builds will be even easier to make, possibly taking anywhere between 7, 6, or even 5 hours, maybe even faster, if you're a PvE god, of course, or you summon overleveled friends. I like to end this video by saying, bless Trin, bless Zullie the Witch, bless all the people that took their own time to make Bloodborne easier to play for the rest of us. They are beautiful people for having done this, and no amount of gratitude can really do them service. I hope these newfound shortcuts inspire the lot of you to give Bloodborne build making another try. To make a build that you've been wanting to make but probably didn't because you loathed going through the dungeons again. Believe me, I was right there with you as well. There's a lot to love in Bloodborne, and all of it seemingly got glossed over due to the state the game was in for its first couple of months, hell, even year to year and a half. But now, much of the fluff is gone, making it easier for players to get to the part of the Bloodborne that they really want to get to. Actually playing it. So thank you all so much for watching. Like that smash button, leave a good pun in the comments, and maybe subscribe if you want to see more content from your local garbage dispenser. Have yourself a great day and a good night. Take care of yourselves out there, y'all. Tell someone you care about them, and I'll see you when I'll see you next.